W5. A beachside wonderland turned into a war zone.
We saw two men inside the club shooting.
Where innocent tourists are collateral damage.
This can't be happening. This can't be true.
In a war among drug lords to control paradise.
If a tourist gets caught in the crossfire, they're not going to care.
Avery Haynes and an exclusive interview with a cartel leader.
What is your job within the cartel?
I started off killing.
Who rules with brutal violence.
There were people on the ground, people bleeding.
Leaves local law enforcement powerless.
No one's ever arrested.
Never. Nobody.
And has an ominous message for those who resist.
If you don't obey, I'll kill you and your whole family. There's no other way.
Here is Kevin Newman.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for an eye-opening investigation into the darkening future for a favorite Canadian sun destination. In the past couple of years, Playa del Carmen in Cancun, Mexico, have become disputed territory for criminal cartels. And the result has been a surge of murders, with Canadians sometimes caught in the crossfire. W5's Avery Haynes travels deep into Mexico's new hot zone.
It's a hot January night in Playa del Carmen, Mexico.
It was supposed to be. Ironically, the name of that party was Peace and Love.
The music is blaring.
Everyone trying to enjoy themselves.
And the dance floor is packed at the Blue Parrot Club.
People were getting ready for the end of their vacations to go home.
It's the annual Canadian-run music festival called BPM. But on the final night, the party turns to panic.
Sound like automatic weapons that were being fired off at random.
Thousands of tourists and locals run for their lives through the narrow streets. Others take shelter under chairs.
We saw two men holding weapons inside the club, shooting at what didn't look like a targeted shooting, just shooting.
By the time the gunfire ends, bodies lay crumpled on the ground. 4 people, including a Canadian, shot to death. A 5th was trampled in the ensuing panic. 15 others were injured.
Right in the area where we were, there were people on the ground, people bleeding.
It was January 17th, 2017, and this Canadian partygoer is still rattled and afraid. Now back home, he agreed to speak with us in exchange for protecting his identity and altering his voice.
We have contacted a number of people who, like you, were there at the Blue Parrot. Why are people so scared to speak about what happened that night?
It's Mexico. It's a sensitive subject. They will protect their tourism at all costs. My safety is on the line if someone were to, say, hey, well, this guy was talking to reporters.
The Canadian victim of the Blue Parrot shooting, a well-known and much-loved bouncer, Kirk Wilson. He was in charge of security for the BPM Music Festival.
What do you know about what happened to Kirk that night?
There was a gentleman or gentlemen who tried to enter the club. They returned through the exit. Kirk then went to open the door, and he stepped out of the club and then was shot. They then shot another security guard and then opened fire.
Randomly firing at thousands of people?
Correct. Right near where we were all standing.
This is not happening to me. This can't be happening. This can't be true.
Jennifer is Kirk Wilson's wife, now his widow. She wasn't at the music festival in Mexico, but at home in Ontario, taking care of their 2 young children.
He did everything for our kids. He just wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, and he did everything for us.
Can you take me back to the time just before Kirk went to Mexico? What was he telling you about what that trip was going to be about?
He went every year for 10 years, so it was the same as always. There was no indication of anything. I know that if he knew what would have happened to him, he would never put himself in that situation.
In your mind, you're thinking, it's Mexico. Canadians go there all the time. This isn't dangerous.
I had my reservations wherever he worked, and it's not a secret of the organized crime that's there. It's never a secret.
Jennifer had no idea, though, that her husband, the father of their children, would become collateral damage in a raging cartel turf war playing out in a Canadian tourist hotspot.
It's a big adjustment to not have him around. I can't fill the spot.
The violence runs far deeper than one night of tragedy at a music festival. Quintana Roo State, Mexico, which encompasses Playa del Carmen and Cancun, may be a Canadian tourist hotspot, but increasingly it's a cartel hot zone, and the bodies have been piling up. In 2016, there were 193 murders in this state. By 2017, the year of the Blue Parrot nightclub shooting, that number had more than doubled to 455. This is the Blue Parrot now. 2 years later, it's still closed down, despite the fact that it's in prime real estate. The beach is just here, the main drag just up the way. An expert in cartels says that what happened here is the bloody proof of a ruthless war between 4 separate cartels, all vying for the lucrative Playa del Carmen territory.
The region known as the Mayan Riviera is an area which all criminal organizations consider important to control.
Valentin Pereda is a doctoral candidate at the Center for Criminology at the University of Toronto. He has spent the last 5 years researching the increasing levels of violence being inflicted by Mexican cartels.
Your research has shown, and your expertise tells you, that what happened at the Blue Parrot signified a change that will impact and has impacted tourists.
According to available information, one of the criminal organizations operating in Playa del Carmen asked them to pay money. Then another criminal organization also asked them to pay money. And either, this is something I don't know, they didn't pay, or they chose between one of the two organizations, and then the other one wasn't happy.
That theory is given ammunition by this.
They, in fact, put a banner up in the main area that said this. This is the result.
Yeah, after the attack, the organization known as Los Zetas published a Narco banner, a message painted in a big piece of cloth, which just said, "This is the consequence for not paying money to Los Zetas." So that what's clear is that Los Zetas was not happy and that they claimed responsibility for the attack.
This area is key for Canadians, but it's also key for cartels.
Yes, this is one of the main hotel areas in Playa del Carmen, and very close by you also have a lot of nightclubs, a lot of bars, and a lot of places where tourists come out at night just to party.
But recently, the Mayan Riviera has descended into the Narco Riviera. The year of the Blue Parrot shooting, there were 455 people killed. By 2018, that number skyrocketed to an unprecedented 840 murders. In a state with a population of just 1.5 million people, someone is now killed here every 10 hours.
Millions of Canadians come to this part of Mexico and may not know that they are coming into what is the cartel crown jewel.
The Cancun Playa del Carmen corridor is very lucrative for all these organizations. They see it as the chicken that lays golden eggs, right? It's a route through which criminal organizations in South America smuggle large shipments of cocaine, mostly. It's also a very lucrative market for local drug dealing.
The Los Zetas cartel used to dominate the Mayan Riviera, but because of shifting allegiances and fluctuating control, the Gulf and Sinaloa cartels have now moved in. Added to this volatile mix, the new generation Jalisco cartel, considered the most ruthless of all, with a grotesque trademark of torture and dismemberment.
This is what's going on right now, and these are the 4 organizations that are fighting over control of the Cancun, Playa del Carmen touristic areas.
What you're saying is this fragmentation of all these different cartels has resulted in these sky-high murder rates.
Yeah, so it's very unstable, and it's been changing a lot recently. The attack at the Blue Parrot, since that happened in 2017, the panorama has been changing a lot.
Changing and becoming even bloodier, despite an ever-increasing number of heavily armed soldiers and federal police patrolling the tourist zones. The municipal police invite us on one of their nightly patrols through the streets of Playa del Carmen. A show of force that's aimed at keeping the cartel violence away from the tourists.
Now you can see many people walk on the Fifth Avenue.
And why is it important for the police to be here and for people to see you here?
The important is the tourists feel safe on this street because it's the most popular right here, Fifth Avenue.
The murder rate is very big.
Esta nueva
With this new administration, we are trying and will continue to try to combat this high rate of crime.
While the police patrol in full sight, the cartel power struggle usually plays out in the shadows, far from the tourist zones.
It's kind of paradoxic because on the one hand, it's very lucrative, so it's important to protect it, to make sure that tourists are still going there. But on the other hand, cartels want to control it, and they won't hesitate to fight their competitors using violent means to gain control.
Violent means like this. Security cameras capture a brazen attack inside a local bar in Playa del Carmen, just kilometers from the tourist strip. With no attempt to hide his identity, a gunman opens fire. As people run for cover, a second armed man moves into view and unloads his weapon. In a matter of seconds, 7 people dead.
These organizations have, for the most part, tried not to hurt tourists, but they don't really care that much when it comes to using violence. And if an innocent bystander, if a tourist gets caught in the crossfire, they're not going to care.
Tourists surrounded by gangs.
There are thousands of people who work for the cartels.
And local residents trapped by violence.
We're living a hell here.
When W5 continues.
The Mayan Riviera in Mexico is a magnet for winter-weary Canadians. In sharp contrast to the beautiful beaches and exciting nightlife, the region is descending into an unprecedented bloodbath. The murder rate has skyrocketed 335% in just 2 years. 4 increasingly brutal cartels are battling for control, and sometimes the turf war bleeds into the tourist areas. Watch what happened in broad daylight in high season on the main road of the Cancun tourist strip. Without any concern for the innocent, a passenger in a car in the center lane jumps out and opens fire. The driver of the pickup doesn't get far and collapses behind the wheel right in front of the hotel strip. He survived, but the 3 passengers in the truck all died in the spray of gunfire.
Yo te concedo razón si por pobre
Tourism clearly drives the economy in Quintana Roo State, and heavily armed police and soldiers have ramped up their presence on beaches and streets. Valentin Pareda is a University of Toronto doctoral candidate researching Mexican cartels. He says the main street of Playa del Carmen is one of the trophies that the cartels are fighting over.
We're standing in the middle of Fifth Avenue, which clearly a lot of tourists come to, but this is also cartel country.
Yes, exactly. Well, this is one of the most lucrative avenues in Playa del Carmen, and many of these places work for criminal organizations, either by paying protection money or letting drug peddlers work inside the restaurant or inside the bar, selling small amounts of drugs.
Is it dangerous for us to be talking about the cartels as we're talking about it right in the midst of their territory?
I would say yes. So that's partly why I'm not talking loudly about this topic.
And that's because while the bustling Fifth Avenue is alive with tourists and feels safe, the cartels have spies everywhere.
TV series and movies depict cartel people as people who clearly look like they could kill you in a second if you stare at them for too long. That's not actually the case. There are thousands of people who work for the cartels, and they're just regular people.
Those regular people are known as cartel hawks. They use special two-way radios or cell phones to inform their bosses about what's going on in the streets.
Their job is to keep their eyes open and to report to the leaders what's going on in busy streets, in hotels, in bars, in restaurants. Sometimes it's an old lady who looks really sweet and she's just like selling chewing gum, but at the same time her job is to report what's going on to the cartels.
Further up the coast, the resort city of Cancun translates in the Mayan language to nest of snakes, and lately it's been living up to its Mayan name. Home to roughly 500,000 people, Cancun reported 540 murders in 2018. That's well over a doubling of the 227 people who were killed the year before.
I want to tell you that we're entering in a hot area.
This is a hot area.
Yeah.
It's Friday night in Cancun, halfway through a busy month for police and for the morgues. Over a 2-day period this February, 9 people executed, 5 at this men's club. And then, while we're driving through neighborhoods far from the Cancun tourist strip, reports come in of 3 separate shootings.
It seems that there are many gunshots now in this area. I hope it will be safe for us.
Our local producer Maria is sitting in the front seat scanning news posts about the night of violence.
Is there any way of knowing if these last 3 shootings in the last hour are related to each other? Yeah, because they have like 5 minutes of distance of each other.
We arrive on the scene of one of the shootings shortly after police. Behind the yellow tape, a man lies dead on the street. His dog holds vigil. For local reporters, it's just another night in Cancun. Journalists like Julio Cesar Solis find out about the latest murders by gathering here.
We're on the Red Cross. This is the location where the journalists meet because this place we hear the alarms for events. If something happens, we can know standing here.
An alarm goes off, and you all know something bad has happened in Cancun.
Yeah.
That alarm at the ambulance station has been ringing far too many times lately. Julio agrees to meet us at the site of the mass killing at a strip club a couple of nights earlier, where 5 people were gunned down in a matter of minutes.
What's happening in Cancun?
You see every day murders. You see every day people suffering, the violence.
And for you as a journalist in a country where there are few places on earth where it's more dangerous to be a journalist, what's this like for you?
I feel angry because politicians every day is taking photos and smiling
talking about everything's okay, we're working, when that's not happening. And never we have a guy arrested. Never.
No one's ever arrested?
Never. Nobody. So I feel angry, and the people deserve more than this.
They deserve more.
Deserve more. We're living a hell. Literally. We're living a hell here.
A hell that many fear is following in the steps of Acapulco, which used to be an A-lister's paradise, a glitzy getaway for Hollywood stars and millionaires. The world-famous cliff divers thrilled a once booming beach resort. This is what Acapulco looks like today, a cartel-ravaged no-go zone. It is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. In fact, the U.S. government rates violence levels in this city on par with the war zones of Syria and Iraq.
Is there a fear that Cancun will become the next Acapulco?
Yeah.
You believe that?
Yeah, I believe that.
A dangerous meeting with a stone-cold killer.
Out here, you're fighting for the streets.
And the surprising revelations.
Police knows where the bad people. They're working together.
When W5 continues.
Welcome back. As Avery Haynes continues her shocking investigation into the surge of murders in Playa del Carmen in Cancun, Mexico, she goes to the source of some of it. An astounding interview with a cartel killer.
Quintana Roo State, Mexico, which encompasses Cancun and Playa del Carmen, is rich with beauty and with brutality. The murder rate here has tripled in the last 2 years. It's the bloody fallout from 4 ruthless cartels, all vying for control. Los Zetas, New Generation Jalisco, Gulf. The 4th is the world's largest cartel, Sinaloa, whose kingpin, El Chapo, was recently convicted in the United States. We have just brokered an exceedingly rare interview with one of the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel for the Mayan Riviera. Now, we don't have much information, but we're following a car now to a safe house where we're being told we can set our equipment up in the living room. We cannot see this man's face, so we'll be sequestered in a bedroom while he comes in, puts a balaclava on, and then sits down for our interview.
So I have to go and take care of them because they're not making it easier.
We'll call him Manuel. He arrives with a masked, heavily armed bodyguard who stands behind me. His looming presence a constant reminder as he clicks the safety on his assault rifle throughout the interview.
Well, you got rookies.
Manuel is twitchy and sits with his gun tucked under his thigh. What is your job within the cartel?
I started off killing. They gave me a group fighting a rival cartel. I'm here, most people are here for the basic need of money. Most of us. But you get so used to it, you forget about your human part. But that's how I got involved.
Can you explain that for me?
Okay. Most guys, if you're young, if you don't know anybody, if you're worthless to them, they usually kill anybody. And if you know somebody, you get to have a rank. So even among killers, there's ranks.
When you say that you started by killing, is that simply to get higher ranking? That's why you did it?
I didn't want to become a big boss. I just wanted to make money.
He was what the Mexicans call a low-level sicario, an executioner. Carrying out killings like these seen daily in Cancun and Playa del Carmen. Manuel claims he's risen up through the ranks of the Sinaloa cartel and is now in charge of the booming local drug trade, fueled by tourists. And he says he oversees up to 300 kilograms of cocaine being transported through the Mayan Riviera up to the U.S. border every month. The street value of those drugs, $15 million a month.
We're in Playa del Carmen right now, which is obviously a big tourist area, but also coveted by the different cartels. Can you give me some insight into what's happening here right now?
The cartels?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a jungle. The only way to maintain a cartel is by order. Now, how do you maintain order? Okay, if you don't obey, I'll kill you and your whole family. There's no other way. I mean, men don't obey you another way. Not this man. They don't obey you another way. They won't.
This area has seen a huge increase in violence, in murders in the last 2 years.
This area?
Yeah.
I know why.
Why?
It's easy to invade the enemy's territory if they're divided. And there is no order. In the north part of Mexico, there is order. Over here, there's not order. But it doesn't mean that the cartel is weakened. No, it's just that everybody's fighting in their own block.
What it sounds like is that there are fragmentations of cartels and everyone is trying to get a piece.
That's right.
You know, the world that you describe for me is so markedly different from what I see when I walk down the beach or down Fifth Avenue.
Okay, yeah, because the guys are not allowed to get involved or mass and get in trouble with the tourists. And once in a while, they break it because we're not selling candy, we're selling drugs. But they're not allowed to bother them.
But are there rules when it comes to innocent bystanders, tourists, for example?
Have you ever been close to a firefight? You're not going to live by those rules. I mean, it's not that you want to do it, but it's hell. Breaks loose. It happens, in other words.
What does?
People get shot. We have enemies that are willing to kill us in plain view. I mean, just looking for any opportunity to kill us or for us to kill them.
It doesn't matter who's around.
No. Oh, actually, no. He's not going to care and I'm not going to care. Jungle enemies that within one opportunity to kill each other, without a doubt. A lion and a hyena.
Those jungle enemies sometimes do much more than kill.
And what's with this chopping up of body parts and leaving them? Why does that happen?
Sometimes you hate the enemy so bad, or sometimes you just like it, or sometimes some guys want to they want to sell you a little bit of fear. But there's an old Mexican saying, you can't place fear on top of terror. You gotta be fearless a little bit.
And then, in the midst of my next question,
and it doesn't matter who's around.
We're suddenly interrupted as the door buzzer in the safe house goes off.
You're here with me.
What's that?
He's with me.
It's another masked and armed man who comes to protect his boss, a security system set up if Manuel is ever off his phone for more than 15 minutes. Now there are 2 masked and heavily armed men behind me as I continue the interview.
You mentioned there are times you forget your humanity.
Well, you stop caring. Just like a soldier, it's just your job. Just like those trigger-happy LA police officers, it's their job. I mean, they go home and they sleep like babies with a baby bottle.
Do you sleep like a baby?
I guess when I first started, I didn't feel very comfortable. I think there was something, I think it was my conscience in my mind, but I started seeing it as the way it is. I mean, nobody's going to help me or my family. Nobody's going to feel sorrow if they see me, if they try to hit me. Nobody's going to feel anything from me, so that helps me feel more comfortable, or at least lie to myself.
The brutality, the brazen daylight executions, the mass shootings, and the dismemberments, all a result, Manuel claims, of the big cartels and now smaller gangs trying to get a piece of the local profits now that the U.S. border has been tightened.
That's why it's happening here, because the borders are getting more secure over there. It's not that we can't take the drugs over there anymore. We can, but the price went up. So people over there can't buy it that expensive anymore. So it brings down your sales. Their sales go down. So we found out that there's a big market here. So we're fighting for the national territory.
Manuel gets agitated when I push for more about the brutal crimes being carried out by the drug cartels.
You're barking up the wrong tree. Because the police is another cartel.
You're saying the cops are their own cartel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Police corporations, they're cartels too. So what does that make? It makes the war even bigger. Okay?
You were describing a war zone.
It is. Right now, if we get stopped by the federal police, the first thing on their mind is, what can they take from me? Either whether they're going to torture me, so I'll take them to my house so they can take my cat, my watch, my wife's car. That's the first thing on their mind. It's not taking you to jail.
Manuel claims corruption runs so deep in the police and in the government that they are essentially state-sanctioned cartels.
It's like politicians. They can contact us too to get rid of somebody else.
And does that happen?
It happened a lot this year, this past year. Because people are always willing to take money from us. Always. Okay? And if they don't take it, they're scared to say no. So basically, they just work with us.
Manuel's English is near perfect. He says he used to live in the United States and even fought for them.
I was stationed in Canada.
This tattered photo is proof, he says, that he was a soldier with the U.S. military and did 2 tours in Afghanistan.
How do you go from being an American-trained soldier to a member of a cartel in Mexico?
Well, that helps you because of your training, your knowledge. It helps you to recruit, to train, and to kill. Out here, you're fighting for the streets. You have to know how to fight. You have to have the courage to fight.
But you've come in here with a gun. You've got a man with a big gun behind us. Can I ask why you agreed to meet with me?
Why do you agree?
Yeah.
It's fun.
And the reason for covering your face?
I'm not stupid. A lot of people hire you because you're crazy, not because you're stupid.
Manuel has shared far more than expected about his brutal business. And his claims about the real cartels are backed up by Mexican journalist Julio Cesar Solis.
I spoke to Narco in Playa del Carmen who told me that the biggest cartel in Mexico, there are 2.
Yeah.
The government and the police.
That's right.
You agree?
Yeah. They work together. They work together every day, every hour, every second. And the government knows where's the bad people. Police knows where's the bad people. And they're working together. The government, the criminals, and the police.
Claims of security.
I need to set the record straight and tell people our area is safe.
But the violence remains.
There's only so much they can do.
When W5 continues.
The beauty of Mexico, the horror of Mexico. This entire country is in the grips of a cartel crisis, and the tourist towns have not been spared. Mexico reported the highest ever murder rate in 2018. More than 33,000 people killed. Mexico Mexico's new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, was recently elected after a campaign that promised to stamp out corruption and regain control over the cartels. Within months of taking office, a new National Guard was created. Made up of federal police, the Army, and the Navy, the force is expected to number 150,000 by the end of the year.
It's not just a matter of being tough and showing that if we put soldiers in the streets, then violence should go down.
Valentin Pareda is a Mexican gang expert who's been researching cartel violence for the past 5 years.
There's only so much they can do. They can patrol, they can show that they are present, kind of act as a deterrent. But apart from that, if the criminal justice system doesn't work, the criminals are going to still be able to go out and keep participating in cartel activities.
There's little confidence that the current government will be able to do what no previous administration has accomplished. And so the fortification of Mexican tourist zones continues. It's high tourist season in Quintana Roo State, a prime destination for Canadian travelers. But it's also high murder season. In just the first 2 months of this year, 130 people have been murdered in Playa del Carmen in Cancun. 2019 is on track for yet another record-breaking year of violence. The state's brand new Attorney General, Oscar Montes de Oca Rosales, held an emergency news conference to deal with the latest surge of extreme cartel violence.
En donde han asesinado a 5 o 7 personas.
Con estas acciones de que hemos estado llevando a cabo detenciones importantes dentro de la entidad.
We are the only foreign journalists in the room.
5 murders 2 nights ago at a nightclub, at least 2 assassinations last night, murders that we're hearing about now as we speak. How can you convince tourists that this is a safe place to come?
The zones where the homicides are being committed are far from the typical tourist areas. These homicides are not a cause for alert for the general public to be generated. I reiterate, they are attacks carried out by the drug dealers. We are fighting these types of actions head on.
Clearly aware of the need to get a message to tourists, the Attorney General invites us into his office for an exclusive one-on-one interview.
Can you explain why there has been an explosion of violence in this area in the past year?
We have conflict with the drug dealers who are fighting over areas to control outside of the tourist zones, which is where most of the homicides occur, as they dispute the drug turfs.
Have police lost to the cartels?
Of course not. I believe that they had control before, until 2 years ago. And now the police and the authorities together are taking control, and that is why we are seeing these levels of violence.
The Attorney General claims the skyrocketing violence is because police have been cracking down on the cartels. Mexican gang expert Valentin Pareda doesn't buy that explanation and says the cartel power struggle is to blame.
Is there any hope for saving this area from the cartels?
If one of these groups actually prevails and gets control over the entire touristic corridor, then violence could start going down. Not necessarily because the police are doing a good job and because they are eliminating criminal organizations, but because one organization was able to consolidate control over these turfs. It never goes down to the original levels. It always stays more violent, but not as violent as during this competition. If it doesn't, if one organization doesn't prevail and competition continues, violence can continue to go up.
Violence is going up. Despite that, so too is the number of Canadians who travel to Mexico on vacation. 2 million visitors a year, an 8% increase over the year before.
Almost anybody can find something to do here in the perfect hotel, in the perfect ambiance.
Lizzie Cole has the increasingly challenging job of running the Quintana Roo State Tourism Board.
I'm guessing that you would love to be able to sit here and tell me about the beautiful beaches, but the reality is that the people at home have a concern. Am I going to get caught in cartel crossfire?
No, I would love to tell you about all the things that we have that are new and great for visitors to come and enjoy, but I need to set the record straight and tell people that our area is safe.
With those headlines, though, and with the reality of the statistics, how do you convince people that it's safe to still come here?
If I go to any big city in any other country, there's crime. There are bad situations happening everywhere. And as long as those situations don't affect the common people or the visitors, it makes no difference. Most of our visitors come here and stay within their resorts, go out on excursions and go out to restaurants and go out partying at night, and they're absolutely safe.
Despite the claims that tourists are absolutely safe, the Canadian government does warn Canadians to exercise a high degree of caution when traveling to Mexico. And the latest travel advisory specifically mentions increased violence in the state of Quintana Roo. The statement says, although tourists aren't targeted, drug cartels are very active. Foreigners may be in the wrong place at the wrong time and could become victims of violent crime. Remain vigilant. In Playa del Carmen, this Sinaloa cartel boss offers little hope that the violence plaguing the Mayan Riviera will end anytime soon.
If I come from your country, I would have hope. Maybe I wouldn't want to throw it away, but my country's thrown away. When I was raised in this, I was born in this, I didn't make it. I mean, this is what I do now. I mean, there's going to be a day where I'm old enough to get out of this, you know. But not right now. I can't.
Manuel claims he can't get out of the cartel, but Canadian Kirk Wilson couldn't escape them. He became just one of the casualties of a war with no clear front line, gunned down at the Blue Parrot nightclub in Playa del Carmen in 2017. His wife Jennifer and their 2 young children are still struggling with all they've lost.
It's still very hard. It's very overwhelming trying to take care of yourself and take care of your kids who are also grieving. Every day I wake up saying I have to try again. And we try again and we keep trying.
Trying what?
Life. And just trying to, I think of him every day. But just realizing that this is what I have to live with now. It's never going to go away.
What do you hope happens next?
I'm hoping one day that everybody can live with a very good memory of him and not feel so much pain.
Well, it's been more than 2 years now since her husband Kirk was gunned down, and police in Playa del Carmen have yet to make an arrest. W5 continues in a moment.